This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it.
Stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy.
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
All right, I can finally speak about the big tragedy of the weekend. The Lions up 31-3, and then collapse. I'm sorry, it was ugly. Ugly. Losing in San Diego. 33-28, I think the final was, and just awful. Anyhow, I'm hopeful start to the season. They're up 31-3, and like, wow, this is going to be, things are going well, and then all of a sudden just the collapse. And of course, over the weekend, Ivy and I took time to spend some quality moments tailgating with the Spartan faithful in East Lansing. You seem to enjoy it again.
It was great. I mean, last year you had taken me to the tailgate, and we were on a bus that just the fans were going nuts.
They weren't as fired up this time.
No, they weren't as fired up this time, and I don't know the reason being. I think it's probably it's just as big of a game, or
well, I think it was a little bit farther away from kickoff. Well, frankly, they were too sober.
Probably true.
Yeah.
But it was a really neat experience. I had never been to a game like that before, so it was interesting to say the least to be there in the stand amongst other fans. And
what a backlash you got, though. You bought a brand new Michigan State hoodie. It looked terrific, I thought, and but the backlash from the Hurricane crowd, not the faithful here in Michigan, but the crowd of Hurricane fans from the University of Miami, from where you hail.
Well, yeah, we posted a picture on Facebook about I went all out with my Michigan State hoodie and necklace and all this kind of thing. I just went all out in terms of being a fan. I thought it was interesting. But so we posted it on Facebook, and my family in Florida, they're all huge Hurricane fans. And man, they just went nuts.
They rebelled, yeah. Yeah, they rebelled. I did notice one thing, though. You had the belt buckle on, you had the necklace on, all from our good friends at Wheat Jewelers, by the way. If anybody wants to see cool Spartan stuff that's custom made, yeah.
Yeah, I got lots of comments on the belt buckle. It was actually one lady I was walking into.
She stopped you almost.
Yeah, I was walking into Dick's Sporting Goods before the game, and she's like, only a Spartan fan would recognize a Spartan belt buckle. You go, girl.
Yeah, she was all fired up, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So it was a good time, and Michigan State gets over the hump. They beat Oregon 31-28. So who are they playing this weekend? One of the military schools, anyhow. Air Force, it doesn't matter. They're hugely favored. The first time they're going to be on underdogs when they play Ohio State in about week 10. Week 10 will be about the only time they're an underdog from here out. So we'll keep an eye on the Spartans, and enjoyed seeing everybody out there too.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's see what else we've got. Germany says enough. Germany says no more refugees. They're closing the door, saying they just can't take anymore. It's too much. The Syrian refugees, of course, piling into Germany by the tens of thousands there for a bit, and now they're saying we can't take anymore. It's been kind of the number one destination for so many desperate Syrians. Munich has been the main entry point. Now it's a breaking point. Reintroduction of border controls. So the trains are stopped, and this is happening all over Europe. Now, isn't it interesting that the Europeans that sit there and lecture America sometimes about how we should take in all these folks and how we should, take in those on our southern border, now all of a sudden they've got their own problem on their hands. Denmark, Sweden, Germany, Hungary, Serbia, Macedonia, the Greek islands. All of these places overloaded with refugees now. And German Interior Minister Thomas de Maizière said at this moment Germany is temporarily introducing border controls along the EU's internal borders. The focus will be on the border to Austria at first. The aim of these measures is to limit the current inflows to Germany and to return to orderly procedures when people enter the country. Orderly procedure. So that is part of the deal. An orderly procedure into the country. You can't just, run roughshod over the country to get in.
Something that concerns me about this is the smuggling in of ISIS.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
and Al Qaeda.
Absolutely.
And all the related Islamic terrorist groups.
Yeah, I mean, they infiltrate these areas, and as we know, these people are very patient. They'll wait many years, and then
before they
act out their plan.
Mm-hmm. They'll sit tight. We'll take a look at the Boston bombers, for example. How long did they plan and plot and work their scheme before they killed people at the marathon?
Mm-hmm. It's just something to take note of. I mean, especially here in our hometown as well. So.
Well, the Obama administration, as many as 10,000 Syrian refugees slated to come to the U.S. as part of this refugee effort. What do you make of that?
Well, yes. I mean, I think, we always are very humanitarian in our cause. But how do you know the difference? And how do you monitor that? I mean, it's very difficult, I think. But I guess we will see.
Well, and there you go. And again, in Germany, they have decided that enough is enough, and they put the brakes on, at least for now, saying we can't take any more. We can't take any more. And here, closer to home, is this a coincidence, or is the attack on police officers continuing? There's a manhunt at this hour for a gunman who murdered a rookie Kentucky State Trooper. And the Kentucky State Police have launched that manhunt. Let's see. Joseph Cameron Ponder was 31 years old, pronounced dead at Princeton, Kentucky, after being shot multiple times. Ponder had been a state trooper since January of this year. Statement said that Ponder was conducting a traffic stop on the westbound side of Interstate 24 in the western part of the state. 10:20 p.m. last night, local time. Statement said that the driver who was being stopped took off from the scene, with Ponder pursuing him approximately 9 miles. At that point, the suspect's car abruptly stopped, causing Ponder to crash his car into the vehicle. Police say the driver, identified as 25-year-old Joseph Thomas Johnson Shanks, got out of the car and started shooting at Ponder, hitting him multiple times. Bullets also struck the hood and windshield of the police cruiser. So yet another police officer gunned down in the streets. And you want to talk about police brutality. Authorities say Johnson Shanks fled the scene on foot, is considered armed and dangerous. He's described as a black male, 5'5" tall, weighing 140 pounds. He was last seen wearing dark clothing. Interstate 24 shut down in both directions to assist in the search. When we come back, our good friend Kyle Melinn will be here as we do a pregame for the Todd Courser interview. An interview like none you've ever heard. We'll be right back.
Covering Michigan and the world from his bunker below the bridge. Here is Steve Gruber.
Won't back down. No, I won't back down.
It's Monday.
You can stand me.
Monday on the Steve Gruber Show. And coming up here in a few minutes, my interview with Todd Courser. And it truly is like stepping through the looking glass. It's an interesting conversation that, well, you don't want to miss. Todd Courser does not rule out the possibility he will run for office again in my conversation. And I'm serious. He said he's going to take time to put his family back together, pray, and basically if it's God's will, he might. That's just one little teaser for you for the interview upcoming. Trust me. Tell your friends. Get the popcorn out. You'll enjoy it. Our next guest, Kyle Melinn from MERS News, the editor there, joining me again. Kyle, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Steve. For some reason, why doesn't that surprise me?
What's that? Which part?
Well, that Courser would think about running again.
Oh yeah. It's just he didn't say he was. He refused. I mean, I went at him 3 different. You know how I do interviews.
Sure.
I went at him 3 different times, 3 different directions. He will not rule it out. Of course, he was busy blaming everybody else under the sun for everything that went wrong in his political career.
Right. Well, Cindy Gamrat isn't ruling out running either. She talked to the media on Friday, and we asked her a few different times, and she isn't ruling out a return either. And I would guess that Cindy Gamrat actually has an outside shot of winning if she were to run again under the right circumstances. I don't think Todd's got a shot in HELL, but
well, you know.
But in the right
with God on his
side. I think Cindy Gamrat came across a little bit more contrite. I think she came at it with a bit more respect from her constituents because she admitted wrongdoing. She didn't go on these long, crazy tirades on Facebook. She didn't go around blaming other people. She took her penalty, and sat through it and took it. And, tried to do right by the constituents while, during her lame duck time, between the time of the story and between the time she was expelled last week. And from the traffic on Facebook that I saw from her, and obviously you can edit some of those messages out, but she received a lot of support. I was really surprised by the amount of support she received on Facebook as opposed to Courser, which was running about 9 to 1, just shut up and resign.
Right. Let me ask you this, and I don't know what the rules are. I mean, I wouldn't expect her to get involved with a special election here to fill their seats, but would that be legal? Let's say, for the sake of argument, could she get back in right now and say, you know what, I screwed up, but I'm asking for your support?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I talked with the Secretary of State on Friday. Actually, Todd Courser could get back in if he really wanted to. This happened in 2001 with David Jay. When David Jay was expelled, there was a special election that was called to try and fill his seat, and he went ahead and ran as well. Now, he finished in 3rd place. There was, I think, 5 or 6 candidates who ran that Republican primary in 2001, and he finished in 3rd place. I think he got 12% of the vote or something. So it's not unheard of at all if they were to run. Now, in order for Cindy Gamrat, now both of them could run in the special election if they wanted to. And Cindy Gamrat didn't rule out running in the special. But I think in order for her to win, she would need a real crowded field of some good candidates in order to pull it off. And, I think in Todd Courser's case, though, I think that the political damage, if he were to try and run, would be too extreme. And he's got some real good candidates already running in that seat who I think would take him out fairly easily. One of which, who I think would just beat him flat out, even just barring the scandal, this Gary Howell in Lapeer, I think probably would have beat him last year had he have run.
So the field is filling up that way. Let me ask you this. On the other side of the whole deal, Tim Greimel and the Democrats, not voting and just sitting out there, I'm thinking, this cannot be doing them any favors because they look like they want bad people to remain in the legislature, and it's like, you've got these bad Republicans, and we're going to make them sit there. And what they did basically is thumb their nose at the constituents that had elected these two, and I think the Democrats did not do themselves any political favors by sitting out the first 2 or 3 rounds there.
I think that's why they ended up cutting that deal at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 in the morning, is because those initial TV stories kind of were framed that way in the sense that Courser is on the verge of being expelled, but the Democrats say, no, don't do it. And it didn't really get into why the Democrats were doing what they were doing. They just didn't feel like the investigation was fair. They didn't feel like they had their questions answered. They had some things that they wanted to explore and loose ends that they wanted tied up. And the Republicans just weren't going to go there because there was, they were protecting the speaker, basically. The line of questioning that the Democrats wanted to go down kind of not implicated the speaker, but kind of raised some questions about why he didn't do something beforehand. And the Republicans were, this has nothing to do with anything. Why are you going down this road? We're talking about Courser and Gamrat. We're not talking about the speaker. We're not going down this road. We're not leaving until these two are expelled. So, you can go ahead and be the roadblock to getting these two kicked out of office, and we can be here all weekend, or we can cut the deal right now. And so that's what they ended up doing.
Well, I think, there's a fair amount of pushback on social media and so forth against the Democrats, and I think you're right. I think they came out not looking good in something they had little to do with until it came time to vote, and they said, well, we're just not going to vote. Well, come on.
But,
at any rate.
If you had been following this all along, and I know you were, Steve, I'm just telling the listeners out there, if you were following this all along and just kind of trying to follow the investigation and you were in your own mind kind of following all these different leads, I mean, you had questions that you would like answered too. So I understand where the Democrats are coming from, because I had questions that were unanswered during this whole process. I still have questions that are unanswered, and I think the Democrats are trying to get at them, but, for people who are just tune in every once in a while, it's a pretty clear-cut case, Well, of course they got to get kicked out. Of course they got to get expelled. And so, while the Democrats probably felt at the time they were going down a pretty good road, the general public just wasn't tuned in to the extent they were, and I don't think they were ever going to get really, that main support of like, oh yeah, we got to find out more about what the speaker knew and when he knew it.
There you go. Kyle Melinn, the editor of MERS News. That's the pregame. And coming up after the break, it's the interview with Todd Courser here on the Steve Gruber Show. Kyle, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
There you have it. Kyle Melinn, everybody. It's Monday on the Steve Gruber Show.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
All right, welcome back to the program.
Surviving on the streets, look at me.
I had to save the second half of the Todd Courser interview. We're going to play it next hour, because this is where it just kind of gets right off the rails. His inability to take responsibility cleanly is what I find odd, to say that. I mean, just, okay, we're at this point in the process, Todd. Just, I take responsibility, I own up to it, and it's still, I was being attacked by others. Anyhow, so part 2 of my interview with Todd Courser coming up in hour 3 here on the Steve Gruber Show. We're going to take a little detour now with one of our good friends, Nolan Finley, the columnist and editor of the Detroit News op-ed section. Nolan, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning.
Good morning. I see you wrote this column here, Another War on Freedom. And this is something I talk about a lot on this program, which is the amount of money spent since LBJ signed, some bills in the 1960s. At the time that I was born, 50 years hence, we've spent, I actually think your numbers are a little light. You say $15 trillion here in your column. I think it's closer to $25 trillion on welfare programs and attacking poverty and so on and so forth. Ironically, somewhere between that $15 and $25 trillion mark is the amount of our national debt. And poverty, the rates of poverty have remained just about the same. They've switched. Older people have a lower rate of poverty, but younger people have increased. And at the end of the day, just as many people are in poverty percentage-wise as they were back then.
Well, it was 17 point something back then, and it hovers around 15 now for the last several years. And, inflation adjusted, it's well over $20 trillion. So, I mean, and, not that it's not a noble cause, not that poverty wasn't a problem, not that combating climate change isn't a noble cause or a problem. It's just, the effectiveness of our efforts. I mean, the war on drugs, a noble cause, and yet look what we spend on that every year for little effect. And, the president just announced this clean air plan, or clean power plan, whatever he's calling it. It's $10 billion cost to the economy, and it'll reduce global warming, even by the EPA's estimate, by less than 1%. And, what is the trade-off here in terms of not just cost, but personal freedom? Because every single one of these efforts gives the government more control over our lives.
Well, let me ask you this. You just made the comment that the pursuit of ending global warming is a noble pursuit. I think it's a fool's errand, but why would you say that it's the clean air pursuit that he's undertaking, the attempt by the EPA to take over every drop of water on the planet, including a mud puddle in my driveway? It's not a noble pursuit. It's a fool's errand.
What I'm saying is we should live as cleanly and efficiently as possible. I think that's a good goal. But again, when we set those goals, what are we willing to give up to achieve them? And in this case, as you mentioned, it's expanding government control over our choices, over our lives. And it's I wrote in there, it's an end of federalism. The states will have to subvert their agendas, their decision-making to the federal government. And in the end, I don't believe we're going to have any impact on the problem we've identified.
Yeah, well, if it's a problem, I suppose. I mean, we do have this wonderful thing here in this region called the Great Lakes. Mm-hmm. One of the wonderful byproducts of global warming.
Right. That's what I say. Climate has been changing since day one of the planet, and it'll continue long after we're gone. It doesn't mean we shouldn't live as cleanly as we possibly can. But there's always trade-offs. Are you going to throw more people into poverty with this? I mean, industrialization is lifting more people out of poverty today than at any time in history. Are we going to how much of that are we going to sacrifice?
Apparently a lot.
I believe our technology over time will get us to where we need in terms of controlling emissions, controlling the pollution. We're making a steady march, and that's how we've solved every problem and every existential threat we faced since man first showed up on Earth. And
right.
that is
and you make a good point.
Innovation and technology.
You make a good point when it comes to the affordability. For example, you've probably seen these same things, but Consumers Energy, the vice president there, last week here on the program telling us that as a result of these 9 power plants closing in Michigan and other power demands and the changes because of this Clean Air Act, or whatever they're calling it, there could be rolling blackouts beginning in Michigan beginning in 2016. The price of buying electricity is going to go up, and who gets hurt the worst on that? The people at the lower end of the financial spectrum. The income inequality gets wider.
So what happens then? Because you can't let people freeze, you can't let people sit in the dark, there'll be more government subsidies for folks at the bottom, and the range of the bottom will go higher, so more people will be on the government dole and dependent on the government, making the government even more powerful in our lives.
Which is the goal. That's the goal of the left. Yeah, the government creates this problem, creates these people. I hate the word victim, but whatever. It creates these people that are being victimized by the government, and then comes riding on their white horse. Oh my God, we're going to fix this problem. We're the government. You created the problem.
Right.
That's what's maddening.
It's that sort of heavy hand that these wars on causes like this lead to. I mean, you look at the intrusion now that the war on terrorism has allowed the government or enabled the government to have in our lives. We're a constantly surveyed society now. The whole Big Brother fear of George Orwell has become truth. Everything we say and do is potentially monitored as the people. We're not nearly as free as we were, and yet we are still at risk of terrorism.
Newspeak. Welcome to it. Nolan Finley, always a good conversation. I appreciate it, sir.
Okay, Steve, we'll talk to you. Bye.
There you have it. Nolan Finley, everybody, the editor for the Detroit News opinion page. Right here on the Steve Gruber Show. Don't miss Todd Corser Part 2 in Hour 3 here on the show, too. We'll be right back.